Welcome to Central News for Thursday, 6th of June. I'm Amy Forrest. In today's news, a colourful yet heartfelt message will lace its shoes up next weekend as Bay of Plenty residents get ready to defeat the crippling disease, which is motor neuron disease. Organised by Motor Neuron Disease Bay of Plenty, the association's Walk to Defeat MND on Sunday is the Bay of Plenty's first fundraising and awareness walk towards the disease currently affecting 28 Bay of Plenty residents. Paula Toka of Motor Neuron Disease Association says it is important to raise awareness about the disease for there to be the right emotional support.
Because it is an uncommon disease, if you don't have awareness, it's hard for us to raise funds and get support for the equipment and the field worker and research. I mean, if we have any extra, we'd love to give more to research. So really the awareness is to help us get the message out and get the funding in.
The $1 million RENA fund intended to cover some of the costs incurred following the grounding of the container ship opens for applications next week. The ship's charterer Mediterranean Shipping Company will open the fund to parties affected by the grounding on Astrolabe Reef in October 2011 and subsequent oil spill on June 10th. While MSC did not own or was responsible for the operation of RENA at the time of the grounding, it announced in October 2012 it would establish a $1 million fund to help cover costs for the disaster. Applications are open from June 10th until Friday, July 19th, 2013, and will go towards the people and communities of the Bay of Plenty that suffered proven losses directly as a result of the grounding. Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, your Friday sees a fine day with light winds, a high of 15 and a low of 2. And much the same for you, Tauranga, with a high of 16 and a low of 6. Just ahead, what is happening for the Waikato Rugby Union season. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. Winter sports have kicked off for the year, so we caught up with the Waikato Rugby Union Emerging Players Manager to find out who you should be looking out for this season.
Kent, first of all, give us a rundown of the Waikato Rugby Union's successes of last season.
Of course, Waikato won the Ranfurly Shield against Taranaki in October last year, so that was massive for our union. A very young team it was last year, and we lost a lot of players in 2011, so to have a young team come through and lift the log against a pretty formidable Taranaki team was a major success for us. So the boys are looking forward to defending it this year in front of big home crowds. And those first defences, the first one is on the 17th of July against Horowhenua at Morrinsville, so there should be a big local crowd that day of about 5,000 people at the local ground at Morrinsville there, and then we also defend it against East Coast in Ruatoria on the 30th of July. So that's going to be a decent road trip for all supporters that are keen to go over to the East Coast, and hopefully we don't get too ambushed over there, but those two challenges, or defences I should say, everyone's looking forward to them, and then we get into the ITM Cup in late August, and then we have the serious defences, first up against Northland and then Otago, and then also we're going to be playing Auckland, Wellington as well as Taranaki. They'll be looking to get one back on us from last year, so big season ahead.
So did the Ranfurly Shield go on a bit of a tiki tour over the summer?
It's been everywhere, everywhere you can imagine, believe me. It's been to staff parties, it's been to cricket games, it's been to, I don't know, people's bedrooms, no doubt. You name it, it's been there. So, but it's great for the community. It's been to a lot of schools, and a lot of local businesses as well have taken great enjoyment in having it at morning tea shouts and afternoon tea shouts and all that type of thing. So, no, it's a great thing to have in our province, and we've got to make the most of it while it's here.
What have been the highlights so far this season?
This season, well, there's been no representative rugby this year so far. It's all been community-based, school rugby and club rugby. So it's been quite a good club season so far. Hamilton Marist have been playing quite well and they're at the top of the table, but all the big clubs are sort of there or thereabouts. Old Boys is not too far behind Marist. Fraser Tech is, there or thereabouts in the top four at the moment. Hautapu aren't playing too badly. Otorohanga, the defending champions, they're going to be looking to defend their title and probably make a late run again like what they did last year. And maybe the dark horse Te Miriti Sports under Dion Muir. He's their head coach. They've been performing very well, and I reckon that they'll become a little bit more consistent in the second round and start scaring a few of these bigger teams, and potentially could be there on finals day in late July.
So that's club rugby. So tell us about the secondary schools rugby.
Yes, school rugby is in full flight at the moment. The Chiefs Cup and Chiefs Trophy is going on at the moment. Hamilton Boys High are actually playing for the Moaska Cup. There's other big school games. St Peter's playing Taupo this Saturday also for the Chiefs Trophy. So it's sort of like a second tiered competition amongst the Chiefs schools or whatever. In the Waikato competition, Cambridge and St John's are going to be pretty much the teams to beat in their Waikato school competition this year, and have some very good young talent emerging through. So school rugby is always an exciting game to watch on a Saturday morning. So if anyone's out in the area, go down to your local school, because there's some really good talent, and they show plenty of flair and natural ability.
Are there any standout teams or players that we should be looking out for this season?
Yeah, there's always some good players coming through. Mitchell Jacobson from Cambridge, he's the Cambridge captain, outstanding young prospect, only 17 years of age. So hopefully he is going to be knocking on the door of New Zealand secondary schools this year as well. So he's a boy to watch. Young Harrison Levine from Hamilton Boys High, halfback, is a good player. Warren Gatland's son, Bryn Gatland, is showing a lot of maturity as a 10 for Boys High. There's plenty of young boys about actually. There's quite a few good young under 18 boys playing senior club rugby at the moment. So I think the union's in pretty good shape as far as talent coming through the grades.
So what does your role involve as emerging players manager?
So basically I've taken over the running of the Waikato Academy. Underneath me I have 4 RDOs working alongside me, and we have a emerging players program that starts at the age of 14 and runs right through to the under 20s. So it's a progressive program throughout those age groups and that. So a lot of it, we do a lot of coach education within the teenage or coaches who are coaching at that age group. We have a selection or watching program running, getting guys out into the community watching games of rugby and feeding us information about certain players and what have you. We have our rep program, representative rugby program that is played in September. We're going to have Waikato under 16s, under 18s, and also Waikato under 20s this year. So it's just managing all those things, retaining our best young talent, and as well as recruiting a few of the good young talent around the country to fill spots that we potentially could be weak in. But the first priority is retaining our local talent first and giving those guys opportunities to achieve what they want out of the game. So no, it's an exciting job, and it keeps us busy during the winter. And we try and do what we can for Waikato rugby and make it the stronghold that it is in New Zealand.
For more information, visit mulu.co.nz. From the winter rugby season to cricket, after the break we catch up with Matthew Hart about his new venture. Welcome back. Ex-Black Caps Matthew Hart has recently become the new owner of New World in Matamata. We caught up with him to find out about his new career move.
Matthew, what made you decide to become a New World owner?
I guess I had a long time in a previous career, and it just felt right at the end of that career playing sport. I needed to get my teeth into something. I had spent a number of years doing some study through Waikato University, so I was finishing that at a similar time, and I was ready for something. I knew that it felt, even though I wasn't that old, it felt like I was getting to an age where I had to commit to something else. And I had probably intended going down the accounting road because that's what I studied, but I knew a little bit about the supermarket industry, and I sort of dipped my toes in for a little while to see if it was me, and I loved it. I loved it from day one, and I was literally doing ground floor stuff, learning from the grassroots, but it was fun. There was good people involved, so yeah.
So how you found that kind of career switch?
At the time, relatively easy because I was ready. I'd had enough of playing cricket 12 months a year. I knew I wanted to get my teeth into something. I didn't want to be away from home all the time. Living out of a suitcase is not that glamorous when you've done it for a while. So I guess making that change was easy. The hardest part, I guess, was missing the guys you spend all that time with and the camaraderie. Didn't miss playing, didn't miss the travel, didn't miss, all else that goes with it.
Because I suppose, how are your family finding it? They must be loving having Dad home a lot more.
Well, the kids are young and they weren't part of, one's 6, one's 2, so they weren't around when I was away all the time. My wife was in her own career and she was happily doing her thing. So it kind of worked, but it would have been hard with kids. You want to see them every day, not once every few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you found that there's any skills that have overlapped from cricket to grocery store owning?
Yeah, I guess things like teamwork, the ability to work in a team and understand your roles, and if you do your bit and someone else does their bit, it all kind of falls into place. But if you let the team down, things don't quite happen so well. And a lot of things I sort of place around values, the ability to be honest about your performance, whether it's in business or sport, being reliable. If you're not reliable and you're not there when you need to be there or don't do the job right, then crikey, in sport and in business there's a downside to that. A lot of different values, I guess, carry over from sport into business. Yep.
And what was your most memorable moment when you were in the Black Caps?
Lots of memorable moments. First getting selected, I could tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing when I was first selected. And then different performances, when you win a test or when you put in performance that goes some way towards winning a game for your country, and you can't ever take that away from us. And it's a memory that, I've always got.
So where were you when you first got selected? I mean, that must be
I was in Nelson playing a 4-day game for Northern Districts versus Central Districts. It was a wet day. We're in a hotel room playing cards, and I got a call from one of the selectors, and I can't remember who it was. It might have been Sir Richard Hadley, from memory. It was exciting, very exciting.
Oh, I imagine.
One of those dreams, you spend all your life looking forward to it, dreaming that it might happen, and all of a sudden you're getting the phone call.
Yeah. So what do you think of the season that's just been?
Against the English, we were competitive. And should have come out on top in the 3-test series, which was a bit disappointing in the end. But a lot of guys did a lot of good over the summer, which was nice after the start to the summer in South Africa, where we were a bit behind the 8 ball. More recently, we've just gone downhill at Lords and lost the first test, so we'll hold our breath that Headingley in the second test is a better outcome for us.
I suppose there was all that media controversy and stuff like that, so that probably wouldn't have helped the season.
The Ross Taylor
debacle. The Mike Hesson.
A shame. It just detracts from cricket, which is what we want to read about and hear about and watch.
Exactly,
and get a whole lot of other stuff that's, wasn't handled very well at all.
Yeah. So what is your advice that you can give to someone who's an aspiring young cricket player?
Oh, for anyone who's into sport and wants to make a career out of sport, for a young fella, it's better than some of the other things that kids get up to. Sports, I've seen the world. I've met a lot of great people through sport. Simple as that. The chance to travel to numerous countries. Just fond memories of it all.
What was your favourite country to travel to?
Wow, geez, I went to the West Indies. Was probably my last big trip. The Caribbean was a really interesting place. We got taken out on a beautiful boat and were swimming out in the middle in the Caribbean. It was cool. But I went to India 6 times. I would love to take the kids back to a place like that and just show them how lucky we are. First time as a teenager, I hated it. I thought, Jesus, this is horrible. But as you get older and more understanding of cultures, I loved it. I would happily go back again.
Yes, I suppose that's a different world from Matamata, isn't it?
Just a little, yeah.
And so, do you play any sports now?
Oh, a little bit of golf if I get time. But with a 7-day-a-week business and a little family, it's a bit selfish to be taking too much time out.
And so you were, I've got to look at this one, a left-arm orthodox spinner. That was
I started out as a bowler, and when my batting improved and my bowling wasn't so good, I ended up being the second half of my career I was a batsman who bowled a bit, so sort of had a bit of an all-rounder. I like to call myself. Able to bat and bowl and catch and field and throw at times. Yeah, always in the game, and I highly recommend it.
Just as long as you don't do underarm, Matthew.
No, correct.
Well, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
After the break, a recent study with soil microbes. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. A University of Waikato Earth and Ocean professor has recently embarked on a study working with soil microbes. Hilary Entwistle discovered more about the research.
Tell us about your recent research working with soil microbes.
I've been interested for quite a long time working with a group of microorganisms called denitrifiers. And what they do is they convert nitrogen in the soil or in waterways through to nitrogen gas, so that you're transferring that nitrogen that was in the soil or the water back up into the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. And this becomes important because much of that nitrogen gas that's in the atmosphere is unavailable to microbes or to most of biology. And so what happens in a global nitrogen cycle is that you get the fixation or the transfer of that atmospheric nitrogen down into the soil by a particular group of microorganisms, which is great because it increases production. But what can unfortunately happen then is that it can lead to pollution if it leads agricultural systems. So what we're looking to do is to really close this nitrogen cycle by returning that nitrogen back to the atmosphere. And so I'm particularly interested in this group of denitrifying bacteria that do actually close this nitrogen cycle.
What first interested you in nitrogen cycling?
I started a PhD back in about the late 1980s, and I was interested in some observations that people were making overseas where nitrogen was leaving agricultural systems. We knew that, but we couldn't find it in the waterways. Somewhere along the line it had disappeared. And between the agricultural land and the waterways were these things called riparian wetlands. And these riparian wetlands are wet, they've got lots of organic matter in them, and the nitrate is passing through. Now when that happens, that's providing ideal conditions for denitrification, those microorganisms. And so there was a question. We knew that the nitrogen was disappearing, and we thought that maybe denitrifiers were responsible, but we didn't have the evidence. So my PhD was focused on trying to determine whether it was those microbes in those riparian wetlands that were responsible for this nitrogen removal. And if I could show that, could I then also understand what would control their activity? Was there some way that maybe we could work with these microorganisms to enhance this nitrate removal and decrease the movement of that nitrate onto surface water bodies?
What were your findings?
Well, I found out that denitrification was the mechanism, and I showed that the critical thing for maximising nitrate removal by this process was to have organic matter present in the soils. And organic matter is the decomposing leaves and root material that you find in soil. And that's their energy source, that's their food source. So we eat food of different sorts. Well, they will feed on organic matter, the decay of leaf and root material, and that's their energy source. So if you have this organic matter in the flow path of the nitrate as it moves away from the agricultural system and into surface water bodies, you can stimulate the activity of those denitrifying bacteria. But what we found was that some riparian areas didn't have any organic matter in it anymore. They had been drained or used for different purposes. And when that happens, you can't stimulate the denitrifying bacteria, so the nitrate just moves through.
What effect can excess nitrogen have on the environment?
The problem with nitrogen is it's a wonderful thing because you can grow much more food. They say that 40% of the world's population is supported by nitrogen that we have either put into the system as fertiliser or through the way that we have cultivated biological nitrogen fixers like clover and that sort of thing. So enormously important for the feeding of the world and the improvement of people's diets. But the problem is that it's a very tricky element. It will move. It doesn't stay in one place. It transforms from one form to another, and one of the forms it can transform to is nitrate. Nitrate is very mobile and will move down through the soil profile and go to surface waters and maybe lakes and eventually into the ocean. Now, when it's there in those surface waters, it's essentially going to act as a fertiliser. So now you're getting fertilisation of the growth in those streams and lakes and in the ocean that you may not want. And you've got algal blooms. If those algae then die and sink to the bottom, they decompose and that consumes oxygen. When you get consumption of oxygen, then you're going to get fish kills and such. For example, in the Gulf of Mexico, which receives its nutrients from the Mississippi Basin, which is huge, every year during summer there is what they term a dead zone that's about the size of the Waikato. So it's a large area that goes anoxic. It's not a complete dead zone, but you do get death of microorganisms, of fish in those systems. So that's something you want to avoid.
What challenges did you face?
Well, what I decided to do was to look at whether there was some way that we could solve this problem of riparian zones not having organic matter in them to support this denitrification. So what I did was I found ways of increasing or adding carbon back into those riparian zones or those areas near to the streams. And I used wood chips or sawdust and buried that into the groundwater to stimulate those denitrifying organisms to convert that nitrate through to nitrogen gas. This is field scale research. When you do field scale research, plenty of things go wrong. You've just got to focus on when things do go wrong, how do you sort those problems out, are there solutions that are possible? And now we've figured most of those things out, and we're starting to see a lot of these what we call denitrification walls being installed not only in New Zealand but in large parts of the US now.
That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have any news, including your own video or photos, go to our website and hit upload. Those were your stories from our regions. Hilary will be back tomorrow. I'm Amy Forrest. Have a wonderful evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.